I think you guys made some changes in in committee and in the Senate. I'd like to suggest that we go back to kind of the original 2022, which was just about moving the timeline for early elections, but take your committee suggestion about having one set day for special elections. I think you guys chose the first Tuesday in April. I'm wondering if we could do that the first Tuesday in March. And the reason is because after talking to one of the state parties, they thought, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could just do the presidential primary on that day too, and then they wouldn't have to pay additional money to convene an election.
I think we're good with that. We do. And with regard to the floor amendment that came on, we did not, unfortunately, discuss completely eliminating those bond elections. The original aim of the bill was to tighten it down so that the counties weren't dealing with multiple bond elections in a short span of time in some of those time periods. So I believe we probably took it a little bit too far on the floor, and I think I'm good with that. And you want to speak to that, Tori?
The only thing this was brought up in committee was, you say the first Tuesday, does it need to be the first Tuesday after the first Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
So the language for the timing of the primary and the general is always the first Tuesday after the first Monday, which once in a while means the second Tuesday because the Monday didn't, the Tuesday is the first day of the month. And I'd like to, for the March date, it would also be the first Tuesday following the first Monday. So yeah, and I agree. I love the sentiment behind the bond election amendment. I just think maybe we need to take a few more, like maybe look at an interim committee and look at how we can make it actually feasible and workable.
Yeah, I agree. This was a situation where it came up on the floor very quickly. And again, I think the sentiment of the Senate was, yes, we need to look at that. But I would have felt a lot better had we had testimony from the counties, from everybody involved in the committee before we take it to the floor and take it to that step. And I think this is a good next step. We're at least tightening it down significantly to save on costs for the counties, and I think it's a good step. So,
any comments, concerns?
Yeah. So again, just for point of clarification, because the Senate had made a couple of different directions on the bill, the only one we're going with is just on the bond elections are first Tuesday in May, or this is
all special elections. So
okay.
The idea, and I love the idea from the Senate committee, was rather than, there's elections all year round, which is very difficult on election officers and very confusing for voters. If you want to do a special election, you can either do it on the primary, the general, or with this change, March, the first Tuesday after the first Monday of March.
So you talked about a further discussion about expanding it. What were the alternatives or additional dates or something that was discussed in the Senate?
Yeah, well, I believe when the Senate committee met, they had it in April rather than March. But after, like I said, discussion with the state party, they thought it would be great if we could do it in March so that they could piggyback a presidential preference primary on top of it. Mr. Ranking Minority Member, you have it.
No, I thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this, and I feel like giving them a set date was going to fall into that window anyways, and so I go on record saying, all right, I support the chair.
All right. If there's no further discussion on 2022, I'd also like to take a look at 2016, which is the bill on online obituary notices as a method of removing dead people from the voter rolls. We had a bill that passed our House that you guys didn't have a chance to take a look at, which was House Bill 2018. It allowed military and spouses that are not residents of Kansas because they're, they're service members and they're residents elsewhere, to still be poll workers. And in committee, we amended it because we heard from election officers that it would be helpful to them if the requirement to be an election officer or an election worker in general was resident of Kansas rather than resident of the county. And one of the stories I heard, one of the election officers, her deputy clerk was actually lived in another county, so she couldn't help with elections, even though she worked in the office. And so I would like to take a look at adding House Bill 2018 to House Bill 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So they could work at any polling location anywhere in that city, or?
So ultimately, it's up to the clerk, the county clerk, or the county election commissioner who they hire or don't hire. So we're not doing anything to tie the election clerk's hand and say, you will hire this person to be an election worker. What we're trying to do is expand the eligibility for who's eligible to be hired as an election worker to include anybody who's a resident of the state of Kansas for that situation where somebody lives in an adjacent county, or military or dependents who are residents anywhere in the country and are U.S. citizens. Because, like Fort Leavenworth's a great example. We've got 10,000 people live on Fort Leavenworth, and they're all residents of Florida and Texas because they have no income tax. And so, which I'm also trying to fix. But my election clerk, a lot of those folks would love to be election workers on election day, maybe bring their kids to be election workers so they can kind of do some civic engagement, but they're not eligible right now under Kansas statute because they're not residents of that county.
Thank you.
I believe we're supportive of that. I think it's a good idea.
Okay,
yeah.
and then you guys had a bill, Senate Bill 231.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would love to put that in there. 231 was a fix for advanced ballot applications. We had a lot of third parties who were sending them out, and then they weren't identified. And so back in 2021, we originally put a requirement that there be a disclaimer about the fact that this is not from a governmental agency, this is not an official correspondence. And so we added that disclaimer, but we required that it be on every page of those documents and in 14-point font. Well, the printing requirements of that gets onerous. And so we removed that. It was a bill that was pretty simple. There were a couple other small provisions, I think, Jason, within that bill. I can't remember. I don't have it right in front of me. We almost put it on the consent calendar, except for the fact it was amended. So it came out of committee unanimously and across the Senate floor with no problems at all. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about 231.
So Jason, didn't it also do something with like requirement to have envelopes in
correct.
the application or something?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It also removed the requirement for the solicitor's information to include the name of the president, CEO, or executive director. Allowed for the date of the election to be pre-printed on the application as opposed to current law, which doesn't allow anything. And then it did remove the requirement that the mailing include an envelope addressed to the appropriate county election officer, and instead it would just require that information on how to mail the application back to the appropriate county election officer be included, not the actual envelope.
I love that provision. I wish we had had it across the House floor. I'd love to include it in this. Any feedback from the House members? Okay, all right. Yeah, those are the things that I wanted to talk about now. I don't think we're quite ready to talk about the other bills we haven't non-concurred or concurred with, but so we'll probably have to meet one more time. But yeah, I like all that unless you guys have something else you want to talk about.
Not at this time. I think we're good. Do you have a?
So is 2016 in this mix?
So the original language in 2016 will remain in the bill. That was allowing election officers to use online obituaries from funeral homes in their county as a means to remove, because a lot of people just don't put obituaries in the paper anymore. Yeah. Yep, as a flag to investigate and potentially remove. And then we're adding 2018 and 231 to it.
I think we're good to go. I believe we're good.
Mr. Revisor, you look concerned.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, back on House Bill 2022, I believe the Secretary of State's office had suggested a conforming amendment to the mail ballot statute, just to, since we're making a specific date for special elections so that those mail ballots can be held on that date without any conflict in the law.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Revisor. There was, the counties had a concern with only having that one day for early elections, because somewhere in statute it says you can only have one early election at a time. By cleaning up that statutory language, we would be able to put all of the early. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I forgot.
You're talking about all the mail-in voting on that one day.
Yeah.
Still have the requirement, I'm guessing, that if the territories overlap, they cannot do that?
Well, this would fix that.
This would fix
Yeah,
that?
So they could overlap and they could put more than one issue
Okay.
on the early ballot.
Okay, very good.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing further, I think we're adjourned. Thank you very much, sir.